and know they love you. And you of tender years can know the fears that your elders must by. Please help them with your youth. They seek the truth before they can die. And teach your parents well. Their children's hell will slowly go by. And feed them on your dreams. The one they pick, that's the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why. If they told you, you would cry. So just look at them and sigh. And know they love you. They love you. They love you. They love you.
Superman, where are you now? When everything's gone wrong somehow. The men of steel, the men of power are losing control by the hour. This is the time, this is the place, so we look for the future. There's not much love to go round. Tell me why this is a land of confusion. This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. Use them and let's start trying to make it a place worth living in. remember long ago, oh, when the sun was shining, yes, and the stars were bright all through the night, and the sound of your laughter as I held you tight, so long ago. I won't be coming home tonight. My generation will put it right. We're not just making promises that we know we'll never keep. There's too many men, there's too many people making too many problems, and not much love to go round. Can't you see this is a land of confusion? Now this is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. Use them and let's start trying to make it a place worth fighting for. This is the world we live in, and these are the hands we're given. Stand up and let's start showing just where our lives are going to. There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds, getting so much resistance from behind. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. What a field day for the heat. 1,000 people in the street, singing songs and a carrying signs. Mostly say hooray for our side. It's time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Deep into your life, it will creep. It starts when you're always afraid. Step out of line, the man come and take you away. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. We better stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing and there's no way we ever could. Now we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when we're standing at a distance. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Now if we had the power to bring our neighbors home from war, they would have never missed a Christmas, no more ribbons on their door. And when you trust your television, what you get is what you got. Cause when the only information, oh, they can bend it all they want. That's why we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's not that we don't care, we just know that the fight ain't fair. So we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. Still waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. One day our generation is gonna rule the population. So we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. I know we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change.
Good morning. We ring our bell 3 times. The first is to call us into relationship with those to whom we owe a debt, those who once occupied this land most of us now call home. The second calls us into relationship with ourselves and one another, that we learn to grow wisdom and compassion and share it generously. And the third calls us into relationship with our children's children, out to the 7th generation, helping us realize that what we do now will be felt by those who come after us.
Good morning. I'm Paul Davis. I'm your worship associate this morning. Our worship leader is Reverend Chris Schriner, who is joining us over Zoom. And we will have a special reflection from Reverend Barbara Meyers, also joining us over Zoom. When I was in high school, I looked through the list of sponsored clubs to see what I might want to join. One of them was the Shortridge High School Senate. This was not a student government. It was more like a debating society, but not a regular debate club. It modeled on the United States Senate and debated national issues. I joined. I duly chose an actual U.S. senator whose name I would assume, but whose political views I had no obligation to follow. I listened to the discussions by others and realized I was not understanding everything. I zeroed in on some words that were blanks to me and asked others, what does liberal mean and what does conservative mean? I entered college during John F. Kennedy's presidency and checked out both the young Republicans and the young Democrats. I was appalled that the young Republicans were playing a game which they called Pin the Tail on the Jackass, consisting of pin the tail on the donkey with a picture of the president's face pasted over the donkey's face. In 1964, as I was turning 18, I accepted an offer received through the Young Democrats to serve as an election watcher in central Indianapolis, where Republicans were publicizing their plans to intimidate and potentially block African American voters. This appalled me much, much more than the asinine game. It turned out my duties were very light. The precinct committee person, a chubby, middle-aged black woman, had already gotten her voters to the polls. I do not know her name, but I now know she was part of a great tradition currently exemplified by Stacey Abrams. The representative elected to Congress by Central Indianapolis in 1964 went on to be a co-author of the Voting Rights Act, a long overdue implementation of the 15th Amendment to the Constitution, which has mostly now either lapsed or been invalidated. I now know that victories are not permanent, that the task of equitably establishing fundamental rights is a continuing struggle. In graduate school, I continued my political involvement and was a delegate to the 1972 Democratic National Convention. There, I was appalled by the deceitful parliamentary maneuvers determining who would be the presidential nominee. No faction or party is pure, and we must also continue struggling not to be corrupted by power or the prospect of power. Since then, I have continued activism, both in politics and outside of politics. Both of these are possible because of the democratic constitutional structure of the United States of America. This structure is far from perfect. We could learn some lessons from select other nations, but our structure is far better than that of the other two great nations currently dominating international relations. In the 60 years since I wandered into the Shortreach High School Senate, I have seen and occasionally participated in some notable steps forward. I have also been appalled and frustrated by some horrible steps backward, including the near cancellation of our democracy a year ago, January 6th. I am not giving up, and I hope you are not. Let us continue struggling forward, even while frequently lurching sideways. Toward recommitting ourselves, let us now join in worship.
Good morning. Welcome to Mission Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Suzette Takei, and I'm a member of the incoming board. We are so happy that you've joined us this morning. Unitarian Universalism is a radically inclusive, non-doctrinal, non-dogmatic, open-minded, and open-hearted faith. We are people who are coming at truth from different paths. We gather together across different identities, experiences, and beliefs to affirm and promote the inherent worth of every single person. Together, we see our job as to love the hate out of this world, heal the hurt in ourselves and one another, and to be the change we'd like to see in the world. We use chat and Zoom or our book near the welcome table to share joys and concerns, which are personal milestones of importance that will be read aloud during the service. Maybe you're here for the first time. We've been reaching out and asking people to bring their friends because we think the world, especially now, needs some friendly places to gather and find encouragement and hope. We have social hour after the service where we get to visit one another in breakout rooms or on the patio. The worship host will give you more information about this immediately after the service. In the meantime, we put a link to our weekly newsletter in the chat so that you can see all the events that are coming up. We encourage you to join anything that speaks to you. We also put our welcome email to request a newsletter or other information be sent to you. There are a few things that we'd especially like to call your attention to. In-person attendees should be masked inside and outside of Cole Hall during the services because it is becoming apparent that vaccinated people can still spread the disease to others. We strongly encourage those in contact with children and unvaccinated or immunocompromised adults to attend services outside or via Zoom. We do allow worship leaders, associates, and other service participants to be unmasked while speaking if they voluntarily disclose that they are vaccinated and are 10 feet apart from others who are not fully vaccinated. More information on the bulletin board to your left if you're in Cole Hall, or the link to this week on the Peak. Don't forget to silence your electronic devices. And a last reminder that this is our first week of the new fiscal year. So if you've changed your pledge amount, please make sure to adjust your donation starting this week. Lastly, if you hear or see something in this morning's service that inspires you or makes you laugh or brings you hope, please tweet it, share it on social media, tell a friend, invite someone to church. We are trying to start a wave of love and justice with every gathering. Thank you for joining us this morning.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Please join with me in reciting these words, which call us together as a community and with Unitarian Universalists all across the globe. We light this chalice to remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are all one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, to live lives full of goodness and love because that is how we will become the best people we can be.
For today's Stories for All Ages, we're doing excerpts from Eva Chen's Colors of Awesome, with illustrations by Derek Desierto and narration and commentary by Knuti VanHoven. There are so many colors. When I see red, I remember legendary human rights activist Dolores Huerta carrying her big red Huelga sign to remind us that, as she said, if people don't vote, everything stays the same. You can protest until the sky turns yellow or the moon turns blue, and it's not going to change anything if you don't vote. A legendary union organizer and civil rights activist and women's activist, Dolores Huerta co-founded United Farm Workers, the UFW-AFL-CIO. Mae Jemison became a doctor and engineer on her path to becoming the first Black woman to travel into space, where she served as a NASA mission specialist aboard the space shuttle Endeavour. As fresh and fiery as a crackling flame, blazing orange reminds me of brilliant and tenacious ballerina Maria Tallchief. Despite facing rejection after rejection due to her Native American ancestry, Maria Tallchief did not give up or change her last name, as some dance companies suggested. In 1947, Tallchief was the first American to dance with the Paris Opera Ballet. She eventually married famed choreographer George Balanchine, who created the iconic role of the Firebird for her. Tallchief's perseverance paid off. She became the prima ballerina of the New York City Ballet, the first Native American to do so. Sunny with a side of sass. Yellow is at once optimistic and joyful and fearless, like jazz and pop legend Ella Fitzgerald. Known as the First Lady of Song and Lady Ella, Ella Fitzgerald's "A tisket, a tasket, I lost my yellow basket" sold over 40 million albums. A song about a yellow basket. She made history as the first Black woman ever to win a Grammy Award. Over her lifetime, she won 12 more, proving, as she said, that it isn't where you come from, it's where you're going. Naomi Osaka was the first Asian player to win not one, but 4 Grand Slam singles titles, 2 U.S. Opens and 2 Australian Opens. Naomi Osaka also uses her platform to fight against anti-Black racism and police brutality. Activist and author Winona LaDuke has spent decades advocating for Native American environmental and economic concerns, securing funding for indigenous groups and causes. She is also a leader in efforts to reclaim Native American land. In 1960, at just 6 years old, Ruby Bridges became a face of the American civil rights movement when she, escorted by 4 federal marshals, walked into William Franz Elementary School, becoming the first Black student to integrate an elementary school in the South. As an adult looking back on it, her advice is, don't follow the path. Go where there is no path and begin the trail. When you start a new trail, equipped with courage, strength, and conviction, the only thing that can stop you is you. Wise words. Another woman known for wisdom was poet and novelist Alice Walker. She said, "The most common way that people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any." As a child, Alice Walker was blinded in one eye. Her mother gifted her a typewriter, and her life as a writer began. Walker's works reflect her stance as a passionate civil rights and feminist activist. Her most famous novel, The Color Purple, published in 1982, won the National Book Award and the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, then went on to become a major motion picture. Despite getting into Stanford University at just 16 years old and graduating from law school in only 2 years, Sandra Day O'Connor faced challenge after challenge finding a job as a lawyer. At first, she was offered a position as a secretary, but she held out for what she deserved. In 1981, O'Connor became the first woman to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States, unanimously confirmed by the Senate. So never forget, there's a rainbow of colors inside of you. Do something for someone today and let your true colors shine.
We take up a collection on Sundays for the simple reason that our purpose in gathering is for more than ourselves. We want to make sure that the ministries that we need, the ones that infuse worth and dignity into our children, our youth, our programs of learning and leadership, and our ministries of anti-oppression and our work in the larger world are in place to meet the needs of others. I wish to remind you, as Suzette has already pointed out, that this is the first Sunday of a new fiscal year. If you increased your pledge, as many of us did, remember to send the new amount. We hope you will make a contribution toward these worthy causes by mailing your check to Mission Peak UU congregation at the address on the screen. You can also use the bill pay option in your online banking or drop your check into the Mission Peak mail slot or pay online with a credit or debit card. Thank you for supporting and sustaining the efforts of our members, friends, and staff. Your contributions make loving, learning, and leadership more possible. One of the things that allows us to find hope and meaning, especially in the hard times, is the love and support we show one another. If you have a joy or concern that by sharing with this caring community might bring the encouragement or resilience you are needing, please write it briefly now in the chat or in our Joys and Concerns book sitting over there. If you are here in person and would like to place a stone for a joy or concern, you may do so while the music plays. If your need is personal, while Reverend Greg is away, you can contact the encouragement team or Reverend Barbara Meyers. be reading the joys and concerns from the book, and Reverend Chris will be reading the joys and concerns from the chat.
And now, one last stone for the hopes and hurts still too tender to escape our hearts.
Barbara, you're muted.
Thank you for telling me that I'm muted. Okay, I'll start again here. All right. During this year's General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the vote of the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade was announced. There was an immediate reaction against the ruling, with a public rally in downtown Portland in which the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association spoke. Later, during the General Assembly, there was an action of immediate witness entitled, "We Do Not Consent," rejecting legal challenges to abortion that passed with a 99.7% vote. Let me read you part of that resolution. Our Unitarian Universalist faith affirms that all of our bodies are sacred and that we are each endowed with the twin gifts of agency and conscience. Each of us should have the power to decide what does and doesn't happen to our bodies at every moment of our lives because we consent and self-determination. We believe consent and self-determination are holy. We unequivocally support every person's right to maintain a person's body autonomy, to have children, to not have children, to parent children in safe and sustainable communities. Disparities in resources or freedoms make it more difficult for certain groups of people to exercise autonomy over their bodies. Although the legal right to abortion has been present, there has not been sufficient or consistent access to these services. Black, Indigenous, people of color, people of low financial resources, those with disabilities, and those in the LGBTQI+ communities are most harmed by legal and systematic barriers to comprehensive reproductive health care. Our faith compels us to take liberatory action in response to oppression. We, the delegates of the 2022 UUA General Assembly, call on Unitarian Universalists to, number one, make a personal commitment to this work. Number two, organize within our congregations and build relationships between our congregations and other faith activists, and then with local health clinics and organizations. Advocate for reproductive justice through op-ed pieces, letters to the editor, letters and visits to legislators, and direct action. Witness by speaking publicly as people of faith whose UU theology compels us to work for reproductive justice and abortion and access for all. Build networks of support for abortion seekers. Educate ourselves and others. Raise funds and donate. For those of you who want to become actively involved, an important educational event for reproductive justice congregational organizing is being offered by the UUA's Side with Love organization. It is a 3-part series of trainings for people who want to commit to being part of organizing a team in their congregation for specific actions in support of abortion access and reproductive justice in your community. At least 2 people from a congregation who will work together to apply the learning from these sessions immediately in their congregation need to sign up. It's facilitated by the Reverends Ranwa Hamami and Ashley Horan of the Unitarian Universalist Association's Side with Love organizing strategy team. Participation in all 3 sessions is required. Session 1 is the role of congregations in a post-Roe world. Session 2 is discerning risk, accessing courage. And session 3 is making and organizing.
Barbara, you've gone muted again.
If any of you are interested, please let me know and I can get you the sign-up information. Some of you may be scared and worried that this ruling portends future erosions of rights that have been recently won. My heart is right there with you. I want you to know that your ministers and your denomination will be there for you and with you in the struggle. If you'd like to talk to me or Reverend Greg about any of this, please let me know. And finally, I'd like to tell you the words of UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray at the rally in Portland after the SCOTUS ruling. And I quote, "Unitarian Universalists have been committed to reproductive justice and the right to abortion for decades. Before Roe, UUs were working with other faith communities to help women access safe abortions, and we are going right back to that work now. I am furious at the way that our lives and our rights are being taken away. Women's rights, trans people's health care, BIPOC community jobs and freedom. We are in the struggle in solidarity. There are more of us than there are of them. We will not be silent. We will not give up our rights. We will disobey the law. We will protect each other. Reproductive justice is health care. It is a fundamental right. It is about agency. It is about bodily autonomy. We are in this struggle together, my siblings. In the spirit of love, in the spirit of justice, in the spirit that is known by so many names, it is with us in the struggle. We will fight for every single one of us, and we will not stop fighting until we win." Unquote. Powerful words from Susan Frederick Gray. Thank you.
To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather stones together. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace. There are times when we may embrace and times when we must refrain from embracing. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time to hate, a time to love, a time for peace. I swear it's not too late. It's time for peace. I swear it's not too late.
Before I begin my message this morning, I'd like to thank everybody who participated in the service today. You see a number of names mentioned in the order of service, and it's just really impressive to see how much energy went into to this particular presentation, and I'm sure that happens every Sunday. Just thanks to everybody, and thank you especially to Reverend Barbara for participating on short notice. One day back in the 1990s, when I was the minister at the Laguna Beach UU Fellowship, I spoke with a Unitarian Universalist who expressed complete despair about our country and our world. He could point to many negative trends in society, but he could not think of a single positive development. I decided to go out on a limb. So I said, if you think about it, I'll bet you can come up with at least 10 major improvements that have taken place since around 1970. Despite these brave words, I realized afterward that I had been shaken by his hopelessness. I wondered whether I could think of 10 positive trends, and I picked up pen and paper. For several long seconds, I drew a blank, and then I wrote 1, the women's movement. Before long, a few other items came to mind, and later, still more. I shared my list of trends with this congregation in 2004. But today, it's a lot harder to focus on the positive. We are in a terribly difficult period, partly because of the pandemic, but mostly because of our own flaws as a nation. America is like a person who is strong and healthy in many ways, but also suffers from some serious illnesses and injuries. And after several recent Supreme Court decisions, there's no point in sugarcoating it. This is a bad time. But we can't just roll over and give up. This is our country in sickness and in health. When the bad news seems overwhelming, I appreciate these words from Unitarian Universalist Doug Mutter, who writes a richly informative blog called The Weekly Sift. Doug writes, "The world has almost always been going to hell in a handbasket. Times and places where progress is obvious to the casual observer are very exceptional. And yet somehow, when you take the long view, good things happen. Slavery ends. Jim Crow ends. Women get the vote. Apartheid ends. Fascism falls. Communism falls. And it never, ever looks like it's going to happen till just before it does. The forces of goodness always seem ephemeral compared to the entrenched institutions that support the current corruption. How could they possibly have been defeated? And yet they were. Now, obviously, we've got a long, long way to go. We don't have the old Jim Crow laws, for example, but we've got what Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow. Even so, this long-term perspective is helpful. And I will say that at this stage in my life, the long-term view is very real to me. I can look back to when I was 9 years old, listening on our big old radio to the nominating conventions in the presidential election of 1952. My mom, who was mostly apolitical, accepted the voting recommendations of her mother, who was a rock-ribbed Republican. So we were happy when Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower defeated Adlai Stevenson. The two parties were very different than they are today, but it's so interesting and kind of concerning that the same forces of liberation and opposition were battling each other then as they are now. The Democrat, Stevenson, was a liberal in some ways. In fact, he was a longtime member of the Bloomington, Illinois Unitarian Church. However, his running mate was John Sparkman of Alabama, a conservative segregationist. Many Southerners hoped the Democrats would always support segregation, and the only states the Democratic ticket won that year were southern states and border states. Do you remember that riveting passage from Frederick Douglass that Reverend Gregg quoted recently? Douglass said, "This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn." That was in 1852, but Douglass might have said the same thing in 1952. The 1952 election also showcased the big lie technique that worked so successfully in Nazi Germany and works amazingly well in America today. Senator Joe McCarthy claimed that under President Harry Truman, the State Department was swarming with communists, and Republicans used that against Stevenson. But showing more integrity than we perhaps have today, the Senate later censured McCarthy. Both parties fronted candidates who were relatively liberal, but their vice presidential running mates reflected the forces of oppression. Segregationist Sparkman for the Democrats, and the demagogic, anti-communist, and anti-gay dirty trickster Richard Nixon for the Republicans. During Eisenhower's presidency, by the way, thousands of government workers were fired on suspicion of homosexuality. Despite all this, though, America was very healthy in important ways. Many leaders in both parties worked for human rights and racial and economic equality. Eisenhower, a World War II general, pushed pretty hard for racial equality in the armed forces and sent federal troops to the South to enforce desegregation. Flashback to the mention of Ruby Bridges in the Time for All Ages. He also appointed Earl Warren to the Supreme Court, and under this Republican Chief Justice, the court became far more liberal. Warren wrote the majority opinions in Brown versus Board of Education, desegregating schools in 1954, and the 1964 decision requiring Miranda rules for police work, which was recently undermined by this court, and the 1967 decision legitimizing interracial marriage. Another positive trend has been some declines in religious prejudice. There are counter trends with Islamophobia and neo-Nazi anti-Semitism. But I remember being in high school in Brawley, California, and belonging to a campus organization called the Bible Club. Many of the Bible Club members were fundamentalists, and I remember a lot of long dresses and long faces. These classmates were alarmed that the Roman Catholic John Kennedy was running for president. One of them said, "We're going to be changing the United States motto from 'In God We Trust' to 'In Pope We Hope.'" Well, Kennedy was elected president. He did not kowtow to the Pope, and anti-Catholic prejudice has plummeted. Moving forward in time, many items on my positive list represent the lasting legacy of the 60s and 70s, such as the increased pride and dignity of various minorities, starting with Black pride and gay pride. And what about ecology? I lived in Southern California during the 1960s, and I often felt my eyes stinging and really burning from the smog. In 1971, I traveled to the East Coast, and when I came back home, I was driving back into California over those mountains into that ugly haze. I decided it was time to move away. But when I returned to California a few years later, pollution controls were already making a big difference. I don't remember the last time the air stung my eyes and made them water. Other positive changes since the 60s. Legislative gains for the physically handicapped, openness about alternative gender orientations, respect for the value and fragility of life, resulting in such things as safer autos and better protection for children. Just as an example of the way we used to be a little sketchy about protecting kids, I can remember as a child looking down at the bones of my feet, which I saw thanks to the X-ray machines they had in shoe stores. Very cool images and very dangerous. We've also increased alcohol awareness, tough laws against drunk driving. We have healthier lifestyles and healthier food. People are living longer. Medicines and vaccines help control or prevent some physical and mental illnesses. We have greater psychological insight and willingness to seek psychological help. It used to be, everybody would just consider that a sign of weakness. You'd hid it in shame if you went to a counselor. There's openness to discussing formerly taboo subjects, such as cancer, death, and child abuse. Self-help groups such as the 12-step programs. Openness to various unorthodox ideas about God and spirituality. And numerous benefits of computers and the internet. Chris said while using Zoom. America and the world have accomplished a lot in the past 70 years. And here we are in 2022, July 3rd. The image for today's service is a photo of the Supreme Court at night following the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This court is determined to destroy the legacy of Republican Earl Warren, and there will be more shocking decisions. People will be harmed. America will be damaged, and that will damage the entire world. Our country is like a medical patient who has just received a scary diagnosis. Taking the long-term perspective, how did we get here? How did the party of the desegregationist Eisenhower come to specialize in voter suppression? And even though many Christians are pro-choice and favor gay rights, an amazing number of conservative Christians have decided that God is horrified about abortion and gay marriage, while they enthusiastically support a president who cut taxes for the rich. How did that happen? The only place in the Bible that seems directly relevant to abortion is ambiguous. More about that later on when we get to the going deeper segment. The Bible has no concept of homosexuality and hardly ever mentions same-gender sex, but it condemns financial greed roundly, strongly, pounds the table on it over and over. That's one of its main themes. These strange developments do involve the almighty, meaning the almighty dollar. And we can see that in long-term perspective. Back in 1928, and that actually is before my time, the richest 1% of Americans received almost 1/4 of the nation's total income. 1%, 1/4 of the income. Then came the New Deal, World War II and the GI Bill, and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. By the 1970s, late 1970s, the top 1% earned around 10% of America's total income. And some rich people were content with that. But others were driven by the monkey mind craving of more, 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 naively assuming that having more toys would make them happier. These mindless gimme gimme machines hired smart people to plan political strategy. And one great ploy, it turns out, has been to manipulate conservative Christians into making them think democratic policies are evil and immoral. Now, look, I personally know Christian evangelicals who accept religious pluralism and do not want a theocracy where one view is imposed on everybody else. But others do want to impose their beliefs, so they vote for anti-abortion politicians who just happen to love cutting taxes on the rich and cutting benefits for the poor people that Jesus said we should take care of. Okay, I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but it's astounding to see how income inequality began to widen again after the 1970s. By 2007, the richest 1% were back to where they were in 1928. 1% with almost 1/4 of the total income. The massive redistribution of income that began with the New Deal has been totally undone. It is not a coincidence that a court that throws Roe v. Wade into the trash can also trashes environmental protections that might cut down on big businesses' profits. Even so, I want to really emphasize and be very clear, I'm not trying to imply that everyone who opposes abortion was manipulated into thinking life begins at conception. The question of when full humanity begins has several possible answers. Someone who is convinced that a newly fertilized egg has the same moral status as a newborn baby would of course be appalled that at least 60 million legal abortions have occurred in the United States since Roe v. Wade. After the court wiped out Roe, one UU organization, I notice, wrote that, quote, white Christian nationalist misogyny has won the day. Perhaps unintentionally, this statement makes it sound like the main opposition to abortion is from vicious evildoers. But there have always been people, including some non-Christians, who believe full human life begins at conception or at viability. I can understand their position, but I do not agree with it. And the court is now saying it's okay if a state government wants to enshrine anti-abortion sentiment, rather than recognizing that there are various legitimate ways of looking at this matter, and it should be left to a matter of personal conscience. After all, 60% of Americans think abortion should be legal in most or all cases. So, some gerrymandered, voter-suppressing state legislature can push the doctrines of a minority down our throats. I want to repeat that I'm not saying all Christians have been fooled by political manipulators, nor am I condemning all Republicans. I certainly can't do that after seeing people like Cassidy Hutchinson risk their lives to tell us the truth. And when I was a minister in Costa Mesa and in Laguna Beach, some of our members were libertarian Republicans who wanted to keep government out of our personal lives. In recent years, the religious right wing of the Republican Party has crushed the libertarian wing. It's important to remember economically conservative libertarians are allies of those who work for reproductive rights. Shifting back to the big picture again, I am an agnostic about human progress. I do not think we can know whether the world is getting better or getting worse. No human mind is powerful enough to add up all the negative and positive trends on this planet and determine whether the world as a whole is improving or deteriorating. What we can know for sure is that progress is possible, and we can throw our weight on the side of love and justice. The life-affirming changes I have mentioned this morning are not just due to the efforts of extraordinary human beings. People who seem quite average can work together to overcome the powerful people who are mindlessly selfish. This message is expressed in a song by the Unitarian Universalist songwriter Malvina Reynolds, and I will close by quoting a couple of verses. God bless the grass that grows through the cracks. They pour the concrete over it and try to keep it back. The concrete gets tired of what it has to do, and after a while, the grass grows through. And God bless the grass. God bless the grass that grows through cement. It's weak and it's tender and it's easily bent. But after a while, it lifts up its head, where the grass is living and the stone is dead. And God bless the grass.
with all of our voices and all of our visions. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony, building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmonies. Friends, we could make such sweet harmonies. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Please join with me in reciting these words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitments. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, place one hand on your heart and reach out with the other hand and rejoice in the good company that surrounds you. Listen to one another, love one another, be present with one another. Go in peace, return in love.